Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Minneapolis City Planning Commission meeting of September 29th, 2014. My name is Ted Tucker. I serve as president of the Planning Commission. Joining me today are Commissioners Gagnon, Kronzer, Bender, Brown, Lipke, Peer, and Slack. We do have a quorum. At this time, please be sure that your electronic devices are on silent, which I will do right now. First order of business is to approve the actions from the meeting of September 15th, 2014. May I have a motion to approve those actions as printed?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, those are approved. Next order of business is to arrange our agenda. The green sheets that I hope you picked up on the table outside, I'll go through them item by item to determine which items we will put on the consent agenda, which items would be continued to a future meeting, which items we will discuss. So item number 1, Downtown East, 500 4th Street South, 329 Portland Avenue, 301 Portland Avenue, and 627 3rd Street South. Is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation for item 1? If not, we'll put that on consent. Item number 2, the Bridge for Youth at 1111 West 22nd Street. Same thing, anybody here wishing to speak in opposition to or modify? Okay, you want to discuss item 2. Item number 3 is Cool Chocolate, 2209 East Franklin Avenue. Again, is there anyone here wishing to speak in opposition to or modify? Okay, we do have someone here. We'll put number 3 on discussion agenda as well. Item number 4 is Urban Forage Winery and Cedar House, 3016 East Lake Street. Anybody here wishing to speak in opposition to or modify staff recommendation for item number 4? Seeing no one, I will put that item on consent agenda. Item number 5 is Hoover Street Auto Storage, 333 through 359 Hoover Street Northeast. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify staff recommendation on item number 5? Okay, I don't see anyone wishing to speak on item 5. We'll put that on consent. Item number 6 is Walgreens at 3101 through 3127 East Lake Street. Someone wishing to speak about that? Okay, we will put that on our discussion agenda. 2, 3, 6. Item number 7 is the Mosaic East, 1320 Lagoon Avenue and 2900 Fremont Avenue South. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation for item number 7? Item number 7? No. Okay, that will go on consent. Item number 8 is Mill City Quarter Phase 2, 428 2nd Street South. Again, anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation for item number 8? I don't see anyone. That will be on consent as well. Item number 9, Steelcase at 506 4th Street North. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation? Okay, you want to talk about that one? That's item number 9. Item number 10 will be continued to our next meeting, October 14th. That's the Hampton Inn and Suites, University at 2814 University Avenue Southeast, so that will be continued. And item number 11 is a zoning code text amendment. Anyone wishing to speak about the zoning code text amendment about aligning the new charter and ordinances? Okay, if not, we will put that on consent as well. So for, let's see, 1, 4, 5, 7, 8, 11. So the agenda will be as follows. For hearing, presentation by staff And public hearing and discussion by the commission, items 2, 3, 6, and 9. Did I get that right? And items to go on the consent agenda as they are recommended on these green sheets, items 1, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 11. And item number 10 would be continued to the meeting of October 14th. So may I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended? Okay, moved and seconded. Any discussion? I don't see any. Commissioner Slack?
I need to recuse myself from item number 7.
Okay, that will be noted. Commissioner Slack abstains on item 7 when we get there. Now, we will move to the action items. There are 3 items we would have handled in the committee of the whole meeting this Thursday, as that was the only business for that meeting. We thought we would move it to this meeting and take care of it now. So Jim Full will give us a brief report and we'll deal with those 3 projects.
I'll do item number 1 first and then 2 and 3 together, if that's okay. Item number 1 is a land sale at 1719 Sheridan Avenue North. It's a vacant lot to be sold for a single-family home, and we're asking that you find that consistent with the comp plan. It's designated urban neighborhood, which is appropriate for single-family homes.
Okay.
To go on the other 2 or wait?
Let's just hear everything.
Okay. The next item is 800 West Broadway. That's an existing building in the gray, and then the project will also cover the ultimate development of the site will also cover this area that's crosshatched, but you're not reviewing that right now. You're just reviewing the 800 West Broadway, the gray parcel. And it's 2 things. One is a land sale. CPED owns it or will own it or pass it through. And then the other is the TIF plan. And you're not being asked here to determine whether TIF is appropriate or not. That will go through the city council. So the TIF plan is attached as background information, but you don't have to read through all of that or comment on whether TIF is an appropriate financing tool. But what you are charged with doing is, as with the land sale, is determining whether the use of the property, the land use, not the individual project, because that will come to the Planning Commission as well, is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. And West Broadway is a commercial corridor. That area is designated as commercial mixed use. It's zone C3A, and the use of the building will be for office and retail on the first floor. So we're recommending that that is in conformance with the goals of the comprehensive plan and the West Broadway Live plan.
Okay, any questions, commissioners? Commissioner Lipke-Peer.
Hi, Jim. I had one question about the first item in regard to 1719. Just really quickly, it looks like it's a wider lot than a typical city lot of 65 feet, but the lot immediately to the south at 1715, do you happen to know the width of that lot?
I don't.
My only comment would be if it's not a standard width, perhaps we want to, before selling this overly wide lot, divvy it up so we don't end up with an unbuildable lot in the future. That would be my only.
You mean sell a portion of 1719 to the property owners?
Yeah, to the south.
Adjacent property owners?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this particular lot wasn't large enough to create 2 lots,
Right.
but it could be large enough to sell part of it to an adjoining property owner, so we can recommend that the project coordinator contact the adjacent property owner.
Yeah, and only if the 1715 isn't at least 50. If it's 50 feet, then that's standard anyway, so then I wouldn't be concerned. But if it's below that, then I would think.
My recollection was it was a 40-foot lot, but don't hold me to that.
Yeah, it looks kind of narrow. So yeah, it would be my one suggestion.
Okay, any other questions, comments on these 3 items? If not, may I have a motion to find all 3 consistent with the Minneapolis plan?
So moved.
Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, we find those consistent with a comprehensive plan. Thank you very much. Action and public hearings. So we move on to items to be continued. May I have a motion to continue item number 10 to the meeting of October 14th?
So moved.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Opposed? Okay, that is continued. Next, we will open the public hearing for the items on the consent agenda. Again, that's items 1, 4, 5, 7, 8, and 11. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to or modify the staff recommendation on those items? 1, 4, 5, 7, 8, 11. If not, I will close the public hearing. Ask for a motion to approve staff recommendation for those items.
So moved.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Those items are approved as recommended by staff. And now we move to items for discussion. We have items 2, 3, 6, and 9. So we'll start with item number 2, the Bridge for Youth, 1111 West 22nd Street. Becca, for our staff, will start off with a report.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I will give a brief report. I know that it was pulled by an individual in the audience, so I will just do a very brief, and then I can answer follow-up questions as necessary. The subject property, of course, is the property that's highlighted here. It's located at the corner of Emerson and 22nd, about a half a block away from Hennepin Avenue. It's addressed as 1111 West 22nd Street, and again, the project name is Bridge for Youth. And the proposal that's in front of you is a conditional use permit to consolidate the facility operation and to allow an expansion in the number of beds at the subject property from 18, which currently exists on the property, up to 32. The property is zoned OR2, and of course, as I previously mentioned, it's a conditional use permit to expand the number of beds. There are associated facilities with the Bridge for Youth. They've had offices and also services that they provided at this intersection since the 1970s. There are 2 other parcels that currently have Bridge for Youth services located within the buildings at 2200 and 1209 22nd Street. Again, this is a subject property here that we are talking about this evening. And basically what they're looking to do is move the remaining offices that they have at these 2 parcels and beds for the homeless youth into that existing facility, again, that's shaded on your screen. The proposal was originally approved in 2006 for the subject parcel. And basically what it was is that it was an existing building in addition to the existing structure, again, that was approved in 2006. And so when staff was going back and looking at this, the records were a bit murky in terms of what was exactly approved. And so the applicant was required to come back through the process now, many years later, to basically consolidate their operations into this building, but that was always the grand plan for the Bridge for Youth. What's interesting, however, in this specific circumstance is that if you look at what exists currently, again, in the subject parcel that's shaded on your screen and then the 2 associated properties, there's actually 3 additional beds than what they can have in this facility as they consolidate operations. So even though the conditional use permit is to increase the number of beds, it's only because of the fact that 18 currently exist in this property, and they'll be moving those beds to get up to 32. But again, if you look at the 2 development sites, as they're currently positioned, there's 35 beds. So by moving all of their facility operations into the subject parcel, it's actually a reduction in the number of beds that they will have. So it's more of a technicality. We are recommending approval, of course, as a staff report notices, and there's also some conditions of approval that apply to the project. I think I'll close here. You'll notice that you did receive a letter that was given to you before the meeting that was from the East Isles Residents Association, and there was a discussion at their recent meeting. It was approved, as I understand it, their Zoning and Planning Committee, but they essentially make a recommendation to the board. The board had some follow-up questions that I believe the applicant is working with the neighborhood currently on. So again, we're recommending approval and asking that you move it forward tonight with the conditions of approval that are attached. And if there's specific questions, I can answer them.
I think we have a question from Commissioner Kronzer.
Sure.
So just to be clear, there's no actual construction happening on the subject
Correct.
parcel. It's all an existing building.
Correct. There's some interior modifications that are being proposed, but there's no modifications to the exterior of the building. Correct.
Any other questions of staff at this point? Okay, thank you very much. I will now open the public hearing. Come on up and tell us about your concern.
Hello.
Give your name and address for the record, please.
Yes, my name is Ed McLaughlin, and I live at 2129 Emerson Avenue, which is that location there, north side, straight across the street. So my concern is in the area of the conditional use permit. It has a couple items I would like to bring forward. One is the enjoyment of properties in the meeting area, number 2, and number 4 is traffic and congestion. Right now, this property is, it has a lot of impact to the neighborhood. Our dining room is about 40 feet away from this location, and it's an important service to provide, and we're accommodating that, but the notion of almost doubling in size of the capacity of this, I think, is going to increase staff and the amount of traffic that's going to be coming in and out. And there's a concern that there's grandfathering of parking places, and there's no provisioning of adding any new parking, although this is producing more demand for staff. Additionally, there's a change of shift at 10:30 p.m., and there's a fair amount of noise and commotion that occurs at that, and that's impacting the neighborhood as well. And I would just like to have either the parking or some of the noise situation be addressed as here, or else limit the total number from 32 to some reduced number. So that's my concern. Thank you.
Okay, let's see if there are any questions. I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone wishing to speak on this further? Come on up and give your name and address if you wish. Are you from the applicant?
Yeah, I'm the applicant.
Okay.
Commission, I'm Daniel Farm, the Executive Director of the Bridge for Youth. And so this plan is to consolidate the 2 facilities into one. There will be no impact on parking, as there is no additional plan to add staff because it's a consolidation. We can, address the neighborhood issues around a noise, change of shift. We have 6 people that leave shift at 10:30 and 3 people that come on shift at that time. So I'm sure that we can come up with a solution for the neighborhood to manage that issue. We've been in the neighborhood for 40 years and we are the only shelter in the city of Minneapolis that serves 10 to 17-year-old youth, with the average age being 15. And so we want to be able to continue to provide that service to the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions?
Any questions?
I don't see any. Thank you very much. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on item number 2, Bridge for Youth? Anyone else? If not, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, we have just the one application, the CUP for community residential. Commissioner Brown?
Yes, and I'll move approval of the conditional use permit with the 4 stated conditions.
Moved and seconded. Did you want to speak on that? No? Okay. Any comments? If not, clerk, please call the roll on item 2, the one item.
Bender? Brown? Gagnon? Kranzer? Lipke-Pierre? Slack? That's 6-0.
Okay, that is approved. We move now to item number 3, Cool Chocolate, 2209 East Franklin. Aaron Hanauer, as staff, will give a brief report.
Chair, Commissioners, 2209 East Franklin Avenue. We have the applicants are proposing the conversion of a 3,785 square foot commercial building into a limited chocolate production facility with a commercial storefront at 2209 East Franklin. The building is located on the East Franklin commercial corridor. Recently, vacated by the Movement Arts Center, which the building was built for. Along Franklin Avenue, East Franklin Avenue, it's a great mix of restaurants and coffee shops and other retail establishments. There are two applications: the conditional use permit to allow for a limited production facility in a C1 zoning district, and then the variance to increase the maximum floor area from 1,200 to 2,150 square feet. As outlined in the report, 5 findings for the conditional use permit. CPED felt that the proposal was meeting all 5 of those conditional use permit findings. I did hear from a couple neighbors, actually just one neighbor, about concerns of aroma was one things, and perhaps parking. For the neighboring properties, the closest residential property is 70 feet to the south of the subject building. So there's a nice distance between the 2 buildings. As far as the aroma of roasting cocoa beans, the applicants provided information showing that the roasting temperature is about half of what it is for coffee. And given that lower temperature, that will help reduce aroma or nuisance or concerns. So in addition to that, the city of Minneapolis does have in our health department the ability to enforce the nuisance of smells within the city. So we feel confident that this will not be a concern. As far as moving on to the variance for the applicants, Chair? No. Moving on to the application for the variance from 1,200 square feet to 2,150 square feet. This is to allow for the maximum floor area to be increased to that size for a limited production and processing facility. This is an existing building. The applicants are not proposing to increase the size of it. They're using the building and trying to use it to its fullest capacity while also being in compliance with all the requirements for a limited production facility. On the site plan, for the floor plan, we appreciate the applicant's proposal of having full retail along East Franklin Avenue, not closing up any windows, and then also allowing views into their production area here, which we think will be a nice amenity for East Franklin Avenue. So they are exceeding their percentage required for space allotted to office and commercial, that being 15% minimum. They're proposing that 21% of the building be office and commercial. So CPED is supportive of the applicant's proposal with the conditions outlined at page 9 of the report. There's also a letter of support from the Seward Neighborhood Organization. I'll be happy to answer questions you may have.
Well, let's see if there are any questions. I don't see any at this time. Thank you. I will open the public hearing on item number 3. Come on up and give your name and address and tell us what your concerns are.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kate Knuth. I live at 2017 Milwaukee Avenue, which is about 4 houses down from the parking lot across. And I want to say that I think development on Franklin Avenue is great, and I think having a mix of development makes a lot of sense in that area. I want to raise a couple issues as a homeowner in the immediate area. The first is obviously about the odor, and I just, if the applicant is here, perhaps he can explain a little further. It mentions roasting at lower temperature than coffee, but I'm not quite sure if that makes a difference in terms of the volatiles coming off of chocolate. And I know we like the smell of chocolate generally, but I would just like a little more information than that, because in this area we do have a couple restaurants, and even the restaurant across the street, we can smell immediately walking out of our house at certain times. So this would be closer, and it would be a production facility. So I think that's just a concern that homeowners have to make sure we don't have that impact on our neighborhood. And then from reading through in terms of the impact on the neighborhood, it sounds like there would be larger deliveries once a week and then the van deliveries on a more regular basis. And I'd be curious in terms of the permitting, how often those deliveries happen. I mean, we do already have impacts from local restaurants in the area impacting at certain times of the day, sleeping and those sorts of things. And they're very much, that noise from that parking lot can be heard in my house and definitely houses closer to the site. So with those two questions, I would be, as a homeowner, interested in having more information about particularly the controls on the smell that would be happening from the production.
Okay, thank you for your questions. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Come on up. And give your name and address, please.
Hi, thank you for having us, our neighbors here. My name is Denise Rulo, and I'm at 2009 Milwaukee Avenue. And the Movement Arts Center, basically, from the perspective you were getting off of Franklin Avenue, is the business perspective. Right behind there is all residential, basically. And we have a nice relationship with the commercial buildings around us. And to tell you the truth, we were very excited to get, you know, like a chocolate spot coming. You know, it sounds great. But we do have some concerns. First of all, the Movement Arts Center, especially the parking lot, is an extension basically of my front yard. I'm very close. Whenever Tracy's gets done for the night, which is a bar, we hear everything. We hear the bottles of the trash enclosures, and we've had to work with them so that we're not woken up in the middle of the night. 6 a.m. we can hear Wellna Hardware store bringing out their stuff for the morning. So we are very sensitive to any type of noise. So hours of production are a concern, and we'd like to know if these are within business hours, and if this is going to go into the night, if it's continuous, if there's breaks, if there will be employees coming out and bringing trash out, little things like that. Another thing is the trash enclosures, how much waste is produced with this, and how much of the parking area that will take up. Chocolate, you know, we have a lot of dogs. Is there going to be an issue of, you know, worrying about chocolate, you know, dogs getting little things like that. And also the lighting. If I'm on my front porch, the lighting, the Movement Arts Center, really it goes right into our front porch. We get a lot of the lighting in the back of the building. So, because I saw lighting on there. So I want to understand what the lighting is going to be in that area too. But the big thing is, I was talking to my friend who is she's an expert in chocolate and knows a lot about chocolate production and has visited chocolate factories. And I was excited to tell her about it. And she said, you should be concerned. She said there are issues, not in the roasting so much, but in other processes of the chocolate, of the vapors, the acid vapors that are released. And she was wondering about the capacity and the volume of chocolate produced, and questioned why it's not in more of a semi-industrial area, and wondering why it's in a residential area, and that chocolate doesn't smell good when it's being produced. What is happening is that you are getting the leftovers of the acid vapors. So, you know, this is new for us. There's not a lot of chocolate facilities. There's documentation of the health risk of making chocolate to Hershey's workers. So if you look online, you can see that there are health risks. And so before, you know, this comes in, I just want to know more about the production of that and if there are any health risks with the acid vapors, not even in the roasting, but in other processes of the chocolate making. And if you have any questions with, she can come up and maybe tell you what she knows, but that's why we have questions about the process of what we're getting ourselves into, and not just competing smells of, you know, of food items. Thank you.
No, thank you very much. I don't see any questions. Anyone else wishing to speak on item number 3? Anyone else? Does the applicant want to come up and address some of these issues? Is the applicant here? Hi.
My name is Sarah Rutholtz-Wein. I'm here representing the owner and president of Cool Chocolate. I'm the architect, and we apologize that he's not here. He had knee surgery on Friday and was just completely unable to come. We're delighted. I'm actually a Seward neighbor as well to Cool Chocolate. I live at 3619 East 26th Street, and we're excited to have a chocolate small fabrication and packaging area in this commercial zone. In short, I'm just going to try to address all of the questions that came up. Number one, the van delivery is going to be scheduled weekly. Everything is going to be stored off-site in refrigerated areas, and so that will be a small private commercial van that will come and do the deliveries once a week, as far as I understand. The real emphasis of this production facility is really to be highly sustainable at every level. It's an exciting venture for the owner, who will only be using cocoa beans from areas where he's visited himself to actually visit to meet with the farmers and ensure that these are sustainably driven products. Additionally, as it relates to packaging and trash and recyclables, there's a high concern to keep that very, very low. There's a trash container that will meet all of the requirements, and I'm sure that we can arrange with the neighbors when trash is put out so it is least disruptive. In terms of the business hours, this is a Monday through Friday business hour endeavor, and there's no discussion, or there will be no after hours chocolate making nor retail hours. The lighting will not be changed on the interior, on the exterior. And the interior, it's again going to be sustainable lighting for the area. Again, we want this to be a comfortable place for the employees and certainly for the neighbors, and so there will be no additional lighting at the exterior as well. I have never heard of acid vapors. I contest the idea of an expert friend. There are a number of reputable chocolate makers in the Twin Cities area. Brian McElrath is one of them in Northeast. I have never ever heard of this. I wish so much that the owner was here to address this. I know that it is, it's less impactful than a coffee roaster. If many of you have been in Dunn Brothers, you can see how often the impact of any aroma might be within the retail environment, and that is minimal. Are there any other questions?
Okay, let's see if anyone has a question at this time. Commissioners ask questions. Okay, I don't see any. Thank you very much.
If I may just...
I know, you're not asking questions. We're asking questions.
May I just make one closing remark?
Yes.
Again, I just want to reiterate, Cool Chocolate is so excited to be in the Seward neighborhood and to contribute to the vibrancy of Franklin Avenue in a sustainable, healthful, cooperative way within the community.
Okay, thank you very much. So I gather there's one more person who wants to speak at the public hearing. You may come up, give your name and address, and speak, but we're not in a debate. You don't get to ask questions. You may make a statement. You don't have to. Yes, you. I'm guessing you seemed eager to say something.
I am a chocolate expert. I have PhD in
Your
physics.
name, please, and
My name
address.
is Ana Bonavita. I have PhD in physics, and my passion is chocolate. My specialist is not chocolate. I have studied chocolate as a hobby, and I have been to several chocolate factories. And believe me, I cannot live without chocolate. I'm addicted to chocolate, but I hate to be in a chocolate factory because there are definitely acid vapors there. That's all I have to say.
Thank you very
And
much.
the roasting is not the problem. It's the post-roasting production.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on item number 3? I don't see anyone. Thank you very much. Okay, Commissioners, we have two applications, a CUP for production facility and a variance for maximum size. Commissioner Brown.
Thank you. I will move approval of the conditional use permit with the 7 stated conditions and the variance.
Okay, moved. Is there a second to that? Second to the motion to, that's seconded? Okay, moved and seconded. That's A and B, right? Okay. Did you wish to speak to that, Commissioner Lipke-Peer?
I actually had a question for staff.
Oh, certainly.
Hi, Erin. So we're talking about production activities and vapors and whatnot, which I'm not an expert in. Is this something, when you alluded to earlier, our health inspections and whatnot, is this in their purview? Is this something that they would regulate and be responsible for? Or is this something that we are looking at a larger environmental impact for?
Chair and Commissioner Lipke-Peer, our health department has I forgot the term of the device that's used to monitor the air for quality or for parts that exceed the smelling requirements set in place. But if there are complaints, they will analyze the situation. They've reminded me that it needs to be an obnoxious smell. Smelling an aroma or an odor by itself is not necessarily out of compliance with the requirements of businesses. So there can be odors or aromas, but it has to be something that cannot be tolerable, or it is an obnoxious is the term that they used.
But if there was something that was harmful for people to be breathing in, that
Sure.
would be something that they could monitor
Thank
and
you.
then
Yes.
be responsible for.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for clarifying that.
Okay, other comments, Commissioners? Anyone else? Okay, A and B have been moved and seconded. Clerk, please call the roll.
Slack, Lipke-Peer, Cronzer, Gagnon, Brown, Bender, 6-0.
Okay, that's approved per staff recommendation. We move now to item number 6. Just let people in the audience know that only items 6 and 9 are left for us to deal with. Everything else has been taken care of. So if you're here for other items, we've already taken care of that. Okay, staff for this is Lisa Steiner.
Good evening, Commissioners. This is a site plan review application for the properties addressed at 3101, 3101 and a half, 3117, 3121, 3123, and 3127 East Lake Street. The proposal is for a new 15,780 square foot Walgreens retail store with a drive-through pharmacy. Some background on the property. All of the parcels are located along Lake Street between 31st and 32nd. And currently there are 4 existing buildings on the site, and the rest of the site is a surface parking lot. The site is located on a T-shaped alley, which is common in the area, which separates the commercial uses from the residential uses to the south. Across Lake Street is a fast food restaurant and a bank, both of which have drive-throughs. There's mostly single-family residential to the south. The subject properties is zone C2 with R1A to the south, R4 to the north. The applicant's proposal is to demolish the existing commercial buildings on the site and build the new Walgreens building. The building would have a 11,280 square foot footprint, and then they would have 4,500 square feet of space in the basement. There would be, the building is pulled up to the corner of 32nd and Lake with a 0-foot lot line on Lake and a 3-foot of landscaping space along 32nd. A 29-space parking lot would be located to the west of the building, accessed by one curb cut on 31st, and the drive-through would be located to the south of the building along the alley. A 6-foot tall wooden privacy fence would be located, would screen the south side of the parking lot from the alley and the residential to the south, with the exception of the 20 feet closest to the east and west property line. So the fence would go from, the 6-foot fence would go from here to here along the alley. This is because these are considered front yards on 31st and 2nd, or 31st and 32nd, where fences are not allowed to be 6 feet high. Overall, the applicant is providing approximately 5,900 square feet of landscaping, which is well over their requirement of 3,991 square feet. As far as building design, the building would be clad in brick and would be 1-story high with a large parapet to screen mechanical equipment. The applicant is exceeding, the applicant is exceeding their window requirements on Lake Street 31st and 32nd, or Lake Street 32nd and facing the on-site parking lot. The analysis for alternative compliance is on page 10 through 12 of the staff report. The applicant is requesting 8 items of alternative compliance, but because the applicant has indicated that they're okay with the conditions recommended, I'm just going to focus a little bit on the landscaping, the 2 landscaping alternative compliance that we have not recommended that the Planning Commission grant. So there is a provision that states, or the landscaping provision requires 5 canopy trees and 21 shrubs in this southern required landscaped yard. The applicant is providing 7 understory trees, which would not technically meet the definition of canopy tree because they wouldn't grow to 35 feet at maturity. They would only grow to 20. The applicant has stated that the reason for that is because of the overhanging power lines that are along the alley. Also, the applicant is providing 17 shrubs in the southern required yard, and 21 shrubs would be required. So staff has recommended that a condition of approval be added that requires 4 additional shrubs in order to meet that requirement for the southern yard. And then for the screening across the residential alley, as I mentioned, the 6-foot fence, the requirement for a 6-foot and 95% opaque screen is being met. However, in these 20-foot front yards along 31st and 32nd, the requirements for screening aren't being met, and staff is recommending that the Planning Commission not grant alternative compliance and require the adequate screening, which would be at least 3 feet high and 60% opaque for the whole 20 feet along here and here. So with that, I will close and take any specific questions.
Okay, let's see if commissioners have any questions of staff at this point. Commissioner Kronzer?
I mean, just 2 quick questions. Do you know if the applicant considered putting the main entrance on 32nd Avenue and Lake Street at the urban corner?
Actually, the original proposal included a small commercial building on 32nd Avenue and Lake Street. So the Walgreens has always been proposed on, sorry, got mixed up. The original proposal included a small commercial building on 31st and Lake Street, and then the Walgreens has always been on 32nd and Lake.
But the main entrance was never considered at the corner of the 2 streets?
Not that I know of.
Okay, and do you know what type of light fixtures you're using along the drive-through area?
Yeah, they would be cut off fixtures,
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of staff at this point? I don't see any. Thank you very much. At this time, we'll open the public hearing on item number 6, the Walgreens. Come on up and give us your name, address, and tell us what your concerns are.
Hello, my name is Debbie Weaver, and I live at 3027 32nd Avenue. which is actually a couple houses down from the existing Walgreens, but also within 350 feet of the proposed Walgreens. So my main concern is the traffic. The original plan had the traffic, the main entrance on Lake Street, which is a commercial corridor, 4 lanes of traffic, can definitely deal with, traffic from a high volume retail establishment. However, the director of traffic for the city of Minneapolis made them strip that out of the plans and put the entrance and the exit on 2 residential streets, which is not good. Both 31st and 32nd Street are very narrow streets. If 2 cars are parked side by side, only 1 car can go down the street. They're tree lined, there's lots of families, lots of young children, and to put the traffic on both of these streets, I think is just really wrong. I would like to see the entrance go back on Lake Street, which is a commercial corridor, similar to what the existing Walgreens has now. One of my other concerns is the drive-through window is far enough up front. You took the picture down, I would show you, but it's far enough towards the street that it would not be behind the 6-foot privacy fence. It would be in front of the setback. Yeah, I don't know how to make it bigger, but you probably know what I'm saying. So anyways, the drive-through window, the audible would be heard on our street and it would be visible from our street. I would like to see them move the drive-through window back slightly so that it's behind the privacy fence. I think those are my 2 main concerns, would be the traffic. Our street has a lot of, well, they're all century homes, a lot of craftsman bungalows, really nice street, and it would forever change our street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Others wishing to speak on this matter, come on up, please. Give us your name and address for the record.
Thank you. My name is Nancy Ninteman, and I live at 3010 32nd Avenue South, along with my spouse, Robin Henry. We are right next door to the proposed drive-through pharmacy. And we both have great concerns about the exhaust, the pollution, the hours of the drive-through, what kind of noise we're looking at with the intercoms. So that's a real concern of ours. And I understand that a car will enter currently on 31st Avenue and then would exit through the drive-through. It would be going right by our house. So that's a big concern of ours. I don't understand that whole screening idea on the corner, how that's going to work. Another concern of mine is this wall that's going to be built. Is there going to be more foot traffic going down the alley trying to access getting into Walgreens? We've had problems, a lot of problems with a lot of foot traffic going down the alley, which is right by our home. We too have a lot of young families. I agree with Deb about the young families on 32nd Avenue. We have some grandchildren that come around quite a bit. I'm concerned also about the lighting, which would shine right into our house. The hours of production, perhaps that's already been determined, but I hadn't seen any notes about that. So in the amount of traffic when they exit the drive-through pharmacy, it would be nice if they could be directed to only go left rather than go right down 32nd Avenue. I'm not sure how that would all work, but that would eliminate any drive-through traffic coming through more of the residential areas of the street with the kids and all that stuff. So that is it, I believe.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any questions. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Come on up and give your name and address, please.
Hillary Ottman. I live on 32nd Avenue as well, 3019 32nd Avenue. I have young kids, and so like my neighbors, I'm concerned about the additional traffic this will bring to our street, particularly the drive-through dumping out onto 32nd Avenue. and would like to see, well, my first choice would be no drive-through. I realize that the store is technically outside of the pedestrian overlay for the light rail district, but I would still, just as for livability's sake, prefer to not see a drive-through added. And if it is there, to be directed to Lake Street. I'm also concerned about, as Debbie mentioned, the traffic not having an access point onto Lake Street, since I frequently use 31st Avenue to get onto Lake Street because it's actually quite difficult during rush hour to safely get onto Lake Street, especially turning left, turning as you're approaching Lake Street from the south to cross traffic. And so I usually go to 31st Avenue. And 31st Avenue, if there's an exit from a Walgreens that has traffic going in and out of it a lot, I think that that'll cause a lot of potential traffic issues at that intersection, as there's frequently cars backed up at the light. And one of my other main concerns is I feel like there's a real missed opportunity. I was glad to see the staff recommendation that they ask Walgreens to pursue more stormwater management. There's basically none included with the plan right now. And I hate to see, while there is a reduction in the overall impervious surface of the site, I don't think that we should use the existing site as anything that is, to improve on that. Well, yeah, we would hope we would be improving on what's currently there. I think that we could do a lot better. And Lake Street, when the street was redesigned and torn up, they added a lot of parking lot rain gardens, and I would really encourage Walgreens to do that and add more impervious surface and rain gardens to their parking lot, and also more native plants to the plant selection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak on this item? Come on up, give your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Grant Simons, and I'm at 2909 Blaisdell. I'm just a little bit concerned about the parking lot right now and the layout that it has on 31st and Lake Street. I think that it would be a real missed opportunity for just the community and development further on Lake Street if it was just a simple parking lot. We see all throughout Lake Street of buildings that are just right next to parking lots bordering along a very high commercial/residential street that is Lake Street. So as we see more apartments come in and more housing and more future developments, it just worries me to build another parking lot that's facing Lake Street, because that just takes away opportunities for future businesses that can put good shops and good stores and good goods for the community to look into. So that is all I had to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Is there the applicant here or representative to address some of these issues or speak on anything else you wanted in the public hearing?
Thank you. My name is John Kohler. I'm an architect with Coleridge Partners, 8110 Pennsylvania Avenue. I'll try and take these as far as the issues that Lisa brought up, and meeting the conditions or whatever, we're fine with that, and the 60% opaque and the 3 foot. All of those we're in complete agreement with. As far as the drive-through, there's a setback right here, and the drive-through window is back here, and so actually we can't even have the front of the car into that setback area. So the entire car is behind the screening. That's part of the code. So that is all a part of that. Let's see. We actually, the comment was absolutely correct. We initially had an access drive right here going out on Lake Street. And that was removed as part of our PDR, and we dealt with the traffic department, with everybody, to see if we couldn't get that, but we were denied. They're trying to eliminate access or not add more access to Lake Street. And that is why the access is back toward 31st, which is a signalized intersection, which in fact is a better access to Lake Street. So that is the reason on that. Let's see. The foot traffic, there will be a screen fence that, as was mentioned, that does go 20 feet from this property line to 20 feet from this property line. So there will not be pedestrian access through the alley to the site or from the store into the alley. If that was a concern, I know presently the building and all is right up against the property line through this area. And so there's no access through here. There will continue to be no access through that area. I think that was most of them. I'd be happy to answer any specific questions any of you may have regarding the plan.
Could you address briefly the possibility of just a left turn on the 32nd it would be?
Out of the drive-through?
Yeah.
You know, you can always put a sign, but I can't stand there and, you know,
I understand
with a whistle.
that. No. Commissioner Lipke here.
I had a question for staff that then a follow-up question for the architect. So.
Okay, ask the architect first, if you
Okay,
could.
well, the question I had was in regard to the 20-foot requirement of 3-foot fencing as opposed to 6-foot, and whether it was from the property line or from this 20 feet of fence, period. So which it was, and then the follow-up would be to the architect as to whether they can comply.
Okay, let's hear from staff. No,
Sorry.
you're trying to confuse me, I know.
The setbacks from the property line.
Okay, so the line he showed on the plans is 20 feet from the property line. That's where it,
Yep.
so in the actual drive-through window is beyond the 6-foot-high screened fence in terms of what the adjacent neighbors would see from the south.
Yeah, let me zoom in for you. Yeah, maybe.
So what we did in locating the drive-through window is, at
Can you
this
slide
point,
it a little farther over? It just went off screen. a
Oh,
little
I'm
bit.
sorry.
That's okay, thanks.
there goes my career in meteorology.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the 20-foot setback. So what we had to do then was come in and place a car behind that. So the car itself at the drive-through window could not encroach beyond that. And then based on where the window of the car was, that's what determined where the drive-through window was. So we worked backwards into it.
So you're in essence meeting what the neighbors are requesting in terms of the
Yes.
location. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Kronzer, a question?
Yes, a few questions. Is there a canopy over the drive-through window?
Yes,
Wall?
there is.
There is. Is that the full drive length?
It sticks out about 3 feet.
Okay, so it's not a full canopy over
It
the
does
entire
not go
drive.
all the way over the car and over on the other side.
Okay. And you know, something I mentioned earlier and what we've heard today about the location of the drive-through window and the audible. And this is certainly something Walgreens doesn't prefer, but if the building were to be flipped east to west, that would move it wouldn't change any of the layout of the store itself, but what it would do would push the drive-through window back near the garages and would move the entrance up to the corner of the two streets. Have you thought about that as you develop the site?
Yeah, we certainly have. I think the Walgreens, their goal with the location of their front door is to keep it adjacent to the public sidewalk as well as the parking. So rather than having the front door, I think you're suggesting over on this corner? Yeah, and that's what they're dealing with is so they can serve both. And initially, you know, we did have a plan that had parking serving actually more directions, so.
Did you have other questions? Okay, Commissioner Brown.
And I had a question for Mr. Kohler as well. Since we had a question or comment about potential traffic, do you have a sense of how much usage a drive-through at a store like this gets, about how many cars per hour?
I can't tell you exactly cars per hour. I'm not given that information. I do know that the pharmacy itself does about 50 to 60% of the business, and the drive-through does about 10% of that. So that puts it in the 5 to 6% of the store itself. You know, generally speaking, there aren't usually many cars waiting. It's not like a bank or a fast food. It's more of a trickle. all day. Walgreens would certainly rather have you go into the store and walk all the way to the back of the store, but it is there for a very specific clientele. And lately, they're finding that people that are going through certain treatments, whether it be chemotherapy, radiation, whatever, and have diminished immune systems, you're oftentimes given almost a list of places you're not supposed to go. And one of them is a pharmacy, because there are a lot of people with colds and they're sick. And so the drive-through is their way of picking up prescriptions. And so they've found a need that they never realized it even existed. So it is becoming a more important part of their service.
And is there any sort of amplification or speaker associated with this type of drive-through, or does the customer simply pull up and talk to the
Well, no, it's not. The window doesn't open for security reasons. There is a small speaker, but obviously with medications, they want to be as private as possible.
Okay, other comments, questions at this point, I guess, or still? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Public hearing is still open. If anyone else wants to speak on item number 6, the site plan review for Walgreens, come on up and give your name and address for the record, please.
I'm not sure if this is appropriate or not.
Well, come up to the microphone and talk.
Yeah, Dick Musser. I live in Bloomington, but I'm the financial director of Migazy. So we're the owner of the building, as we know. So I don't know if I'm allowed to speak in this side of the thing.
If you have something to say about the
other
site
side
plan
is the
review.
importance of the sale as an agency and nonprofits. We've been in that site 20 years. We have a mortgage on the building. One of the things that this will solve for us and for the agency is to pay off the mortgage, develop a nice supply, and I think, as we know, that building is kind of aged. It goes way back to Wonderland days, and then Brown Institute. And as a nonprofit, we determined that we don't want to be in the business of managing a building. So it's very important on the other side of this, just for the agency itself. And I understand certainly all the concerns, and I would have them too if I lived in a neighborhood. So anyway, I just wanted to say what the importance is for Migazy as well, that the sale goes through. I know we met with the architect and developer today, and they have gone through many changes to try to accommodate all the concerns of the neighborhood as best they can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to speak about the site plan review for this project? If not, I will close the public hearing. Commissioners, we have just one item, the site plan review. Staff suggests, 8 conditions. Commissioner Brown?
And I'll move approval of the site plan review with the 8 stated conditions.
Okay, any comments on that? Additional conditions to consider? If not, clerk, please call a roll on that one item. Oh, we need a second. Didn't I hear from down there? Do we have a second on this? Thank you. Moved and seconded. Now we can call the roll, please.
Bender. Brown. Gagnon. Kranzer. Lipke-Pier. Slack. That's 6-0.
Okay, thank you very much. We now move to our last item, which is number 9. Steel Case Project, 506 4th Street North. And Janelle Widmeyer is staff for this and will give us a brief report.
Good evening. This site is located in the North Loop. It's in the B4N and the downtown parking overlay districts. Is actually the third phase of planning and development located on this block, not too far from the Twin Stadium, right now by the I-94 viaduct. It takes up this corner, and the PUD actually covers about 3/4 of the whole block. Bookman Lofts, Bookman Stacks are there. So this is just the infill site, and this was brought to committee of the whole before, so just again a brief recap of that. So it's a new 4-story building, 23,000 square feet in area, all non-residential, and they're proposing to do a plaza. So the applications that are needed for the project are a conditional use permit amendment for the third phase of the PUD, variance to reduce the minimum floor area ratio from 2.0 to 1.27, variance of the plaza design standards to allow more of the building to cover the plaza than normally allowed. 30% is allowed. They're proposing 33.3%. And lastly, site plan review. I mentioned this went to committee of the whole before. That was just earlier this year. There weren't too many comments from that. They're just looking for some more. The main comment was looking for more information or details on the plaza design. Other than that, the building design hasn't changed all that much. Here is, let's see. Here's one rendering of the building. I mentioned the 4 stories. Containers are proposed to be used for the design. So this would be from 4th Street and then looking from 5th Street. For the conditional use permit, we're recommending approval, finding that this third phase is consistent with the policies of the comprehensive plan. It fits in with the mixed-use character of this area. Just touch on parking briefly. There's no parking required for this use as it's located in the downtown districts. They are providing some bicycle parking. They're even proposing to relocate a nice ride kiosk into the plaza area. So again, for the amendment to the PUD, we didn't have any concerns. Are recommending approval of that. For the floor area ratio variance, again, that is a reduction that's being requested, and of course, the purpose of the ordinance is to ensure that downtown properties aren't underutilized. There's a couple of constraints with this site relating to some poor soil conditions at the corner, making it more difficult to build on. Also, the part of the site that's closest to the Bookman Stacks already has a parking garage built under it, and it can only hold so much structure above it. And then lastly, this being part of a condo association, they do have a declaration, which was actually provided to you today, a full copy of that. But that declaration does include a cap on height. So again, there's some restrictions here. But when we're looking at the overall floor area in the PUD, the average, or when you add in the condo buildings, you get to an FAR of 2.6. So although this building is less than the 2.0, overall we have a larger FAR that meets the intent of the ordinance. Some other things that we looked at, some ways they're mitigating the lower FARs. They are doing that large plaza area. Up to the site plan here. So that's extending along both street frontages, but they did pull the upper levels of the building out, so we do have building bulk that is built up to the street corner and carrying the street wall. So for all these reasons, we are recommending approval of the variance. Then moving on to the next variance, which is the plaza coverage variance. So the applicant did provide a diagram illustrating how much of the plaza area is covered. And so this blue shaded area, again, it's just 33.3%. They're normally limited to 30%. And like with the FAR variance, those same site constrictions apply to this plaza variance as well. And having the plaza extend along the street does make sure that it stays open. They're also proposing, you can kind of see in this diagram, this open space here. So it does have this center court that where light can access to the plaza. So it shouldn't be a dark, uninviting space, which is also one point of having most of the plaza uncovered. Let's see some other things. This it shows it best on this rendering. With the plaza being open out to the street, it does lead up to the main entrance that is inset a little bit, but the entrance is part of a wall of glass. So this whole first floor lobby level is looking out onto this plaza. And the applicant did mention that they're intending for the first floor of the lobby to be kind of an extension of that plaza. So it's an indoor plaza in a way. So for all these reasons, we think that the request is reasonable and are recommending approval. But there was one concern that we had. Don't want to forget that. And that has to do with one area. This area here, I don't know how well it shows up. So it's kind of the darker hatched area. That is actually proposed to be turf, and this could be a fairly heavily shaded area of the plaza, so we're just recommending that the applicant actually consider a different type of ground cover or paving or something that will be more durable for a shady location. And then moving on to the site plan review, there were some alternative compliance requests. The first has to do with the building placement. And there we go, now I can see the whole site. The ground floor of the building, as I mentioned, is set in fairly far because of the soil conditions, and no part of the ground floor wall is within 8 feet of either adjacent street. So that does need alternative compliance. Again, we have the plaza between the building and the street as a mitigating factor. One thing that we did want to get out of having the ground floor of the building set back a little bit more is actually another access point to the plaza. Right now, the plaza just has an access proposed here close to the intersection of 4th and 5th, but we're recommending that another access point be provided somewhere over here on the northwest side, and that is because we have, it doesn't show it on the landscaping plan, but there we go. On the site plan, this is where all the bike parking will be. So to ensure that there's kind of equal access across to the main entrances, that's one recommended condition. The next thing that's being requested for alternative compliance is the ground floor windows. I'll start with the site plan. It's this wall here, again, that main wall facing the plaza and the street intersection that is subject to the window requirements. And on the ground floor, here's the elevation view. The overall amount of windows is just fine. It's the fact they're tinting it and that the visible light transmittance is proposed to be 0.55 rather than the minimum of 0.6. The applicant did provide a sample. I don't know. You probably can't really see it from here, but if you want me to, I could bring it up there and you could pass it around. But they did note that the reason that they're proposing this glass, the green of course ties in with the color of the containers of the building, but also the light or the glass itself will have a U value, a solar heat gain coefficient, and light to solar heat gain ratio of this glass that would reach the required standards from ASHRAE 90.1. I don't know exactly what those are, but they could expand on it further if you would like to know. And they did provide some additional information that was included in your packets. So when we're looking at this for alternative compliance, although they're asking for a slight decrease in the visible light transmittance, with the overall amount of windows that are provided, we think that would offset any potential adverse effects of just a little bit more reflectance. So we are recommending that be granted. And then lastly, the last alternative compliance request is related to the number of on-site canopy trees. And They're required to have at least 2. They're proposing 4 ornamental trees instead. The overall amount of landscaped area on the site is far more than what they actually need to provide. But just with this opening here, we are recommending that the applicant consider putting some more trees maybe on the Fifth Avenue side of the site, just to prevent any generation of wind currents, because we do have that ground floor opening. But otherwise, we're recommending that that be granted as well. And then the last of the conditions of approval for the site plan review are all related to just meeting code requirements, and those are for mechanical equipment screening, lighting, signage, and the plaza design standards, which will be covered under the administrative review for the plaza. I'm trying to think. One thing I did kind of gloss over was just the height allowed for this site. And in the B4N district, they're actually allowed to go up to 10 stories and 140 feet. The small area plan says a height of 2 to 10 stories is appropriate here. So the height that is proposed at 4 stories is allowed. I know there's been some comments about the condo association declaration doesn't allow for anything over 40 feet. They're proposing the building at 41 feet, but that being a private agreement isn't something that the city enforces. So with that, I can take any questions.
Okay, let's see if there are questions from commissioners. Commissioner Kronzer?
Yeah, thank you. So I guess I'm confused about the plaza ordinance, but we won't get into that. So if the building is covering the plaza, why is it considered a plaza? Wouldn't it be just considered part of the site, not part of a plaza?
It is considered a plaza as this is the main access to the entrance. It meets our definition of hardscaping. The whole point is to have this as a more public gathering space. So it was meeting the definition of plaza.
And my other question was the last point you made. So this declaration has no bearing on zoning. It's a private agreement with private individuals and parties.
That's correct. It's a private agreement.
Other questions of staff at this time? If not, thank you very much. I'll open the public hearing on item number 9, Steel Case Building. Anyone wishing to speak on this, please come on up and give your name and address for the record.
I'm Einar Hansen. I wrote you a letter. I represent the Bookman Master Association. We have 2 of the directors here of the Bookman Lofts and the Bookman Stacks here tonight, Mike Thyron and Trent Eisenberg. Mike is also president of the Master Association. I come to talk to you because I have to take issue with the one point Ms. Widmeyer makes, that a private agreement, she considers the declaration to be a private agreement, which the city of Minneapolis should not take into consideration in its zoning and planning approval of a conditional use permit and a variance. And I take issue with that. The property was developed as a common scheme. It has a PUD for a common scheme. If you see tract G, that is the property that's under your consideration here tonight. Tract behind it are two residential associations, Bookman Lofts and Bookman Stacks. They are all subject to a master declaration, a master association declaration, which has covenants and restrictions upon the development of this scheme. That is what you approved when you approved the planned unit development under which this all is. So I take issue that this isn't relevant to your consideration of a conditional use permit and a variance. The provision in question is quoted in my letter to you, but here it is again. It is section 4.8, my apologies, 4.8 of the master declaration, and it says that no building or other improvement on tract G shall exceed 40 feet. Very clear provision, very clear covenant and restriction. When this same property was being sought for approval of a conditional use permit in May for a 3-story building, we didn't appear. We had no reason to contest it because that was not something that would exceed this restriction. However, these properties are entitled to the protection of these restrictions and covenants. Now, findings that you are being asked to make tonight on the variance and the conditional use permit is that approval of the conditional use permit and the variance will not be injurious to other property in the vicinity. As you can see, the other property in the vicinity is not just in the vicinity, it's in the very same PUD, they share party walls, or are going to expect, but they're right there. It's very difficult for me to understand how you can make a finding of a lack of it being injurious to other property in the vicinity if, in fact, it's going to be a blatant violation of this height restriction. In the event, and this is not a threat, but in the event that you were to approve this, I anticipate the Master Association would have to enforce on behalf of its members, its 5 members of this Master Association, this covenant. A court almost certainly would find that there's irreparable harm from the violation of this kind of a covenant. So while in a general rule, private agreements may not be something that you would consider relevant to your consideration, in this particular case, when you're being asked to find that it will not be injurious to neighboring property, it's very difficult for me to understand how that finding could be reached when it almost certainly a court would find irreparable harm from such a violation. So I ask you to consider that in this particular case, I would take issue with the conclusion of staff. We don't have a problem with a development such as what's being said here if it wasn't in violation of this covenant of 40 feet high. But as presented to you, unfortunately, and I do find this unfortunate because the developer could have come, advised us of this, and before we got notice of the public hearing, but that was our notice of this violation. So we find ourselves this far down the road and having to make this objection. I apologize for that, but that is just the way it is being presented to you, and we're not the ones who are at fault for that.
We have a question from Commissioner Lipke-Peer.
Yeah, so just to clarify, the one issue, is the only issue that you have with the declaration the height, or are there other issues you could
That's it.
briefly?
Just the height.
Just the height?
Just the height.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, I don't see any other questions. Thank you very much.
for your time.
Is there anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Come on up and give your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, Chairman and Commissioners. My name is Scott Patinga. I am the developer of the Steelcase building. Just like to address the gentleman's comments. So we're all familiar, there is the truth and there is the whole truth. And one thing the attorney forgot to tell you is the property that I purchased a couple years ago was a default. The architect, James Dayton, essentially was responsible for the development of the entire PUD. What happened is, for some reason, he ran out of money, was unable to continue to build his restaurant on that parcel. Unfortunately, during that time, he never actually capped the property which I now own. So the reason being I'm 41 feet is I literally have to go in, I have to insulate the top of the parking garage, which was never done. I actually have to put cement over top of it. Essentially, what he did is he built a house and he didn't put the proper materials on it to make sure that his roof does not leak. And right now the parking garage leaks. So what we're doing is we're going to waterproof the garage, we're going to put membrane, and at the end of the day, yes, I will be 41 feet, but the reason being, like I said, I have to fix the roof that they never decided to fix in the first place. Thank you.
Let's see if any questions of you. None, I don't think. Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak on item number 9? Anyone else? This is your chance if you have something to say. Your name and address, please.
My name is Jeff Brown. I live in the Bookman Lofts building, 525 North 3rd, number 108. I'm not sure this is the purview of the committee, so if it isn't, you can tell me and I'll stop. My main concern is the material that's being used. Is that within the purview of this group?
You can talk about it, certainly.
Okay. My understanding is that the building, our site sits in a historic district. When I looked, if that is the case, when I looked at the guidelines, it has requirements for materials that are supposed to be used and various other design elements. I don't think that the material that's being used, green metal, as far as I can tell, fits within the neighborhood. For those of you who have driven or perhaps live in the neighborhood, you will not see any other buildings of the sort. There are almost entirely warehouse-looking buildings made out of brick and concrete materials, which is the nature of the neighborhood, which is what draws us there, which is what keeps it what it is. I'd ask you to consider that if that is within your purview.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Just a question of staff. This is not in a preservation district of any sort, is it?
It's adjacent to the historic district boundaries, but it's not within.
So as we think about compatibility, we might want to consider the comments, but it's not controlled by the HPC what materials are used.
Right, the HBC will not review this project.
Okay. Other questions on this? Anyone else wishing to speak? Come on up.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity. My name is Deb Loon Stumbros. I too live in Bookman Lofts. I'm in Unit 506. And just a couple of notes. Frankly, when we first read about this in the newspaper, I chuckled and I said, surely they've got to be kidding, and sort of thought it would go away. And I too am very concerned about the exterior material choice of the developer. It's an interesting idea. I am very concerned that it won't stand the test of time. What will happen as those metal container sides start to fail and rust or whatever. I haven't done any research, so perhaps there's a plan and that won't happen, but I have to look at the building, and so I also start out with just the, gosh, that's not very attractive. The second question that I actually have is related to site fencing and whether they plan to put anything between the plaza that the Bookman Master Association spends a lot of money to maintain and this building, and whether the people who visit the business will be able to use the Bookman Master Association's plaza for their personal use. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? I don't see any. Anyone else wishing to speak on item 9 here? Anyone else?
Once again, I'm Grant Simons. I'm on 2909 Blaisdell. I am, in a year, going to be going to school for architecture and urban studying. So I have done a lot of research on urban planning and architecture and every kind of design that's going on right now. So this is a steel container building, and it's kind of been a fad around Europe, Netherlands, kind of Iceland, and in some areas of North America, like in Canada. None of these buildings so far have rusted, because usually it kind of looks like a shipping container, but they actually do an extra job to make it not rustable, if that's a correct term to use. But these have been around. I've seen one of them that's been around for 20 years, and that hasn't rusted yet, and it's actually in a pretty historic district. So it is similar to North Loop in the sense that there are buildings that are also using steel kind of siding on them as such. And I think it would just fit in a sense that you wouldn't really think of at first. But also with the plaza, North Loop is in desperate need of green space. And I think that this plaza would add that little extra piece of green space, even though it is just a small bit of it. But I would just like to say that I'm in favor of this, and I would be very, very excited to see this go into a great neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you for your observations. Anyone else wishing to speak on this? Last call. I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioner Lipke Peer.
I have a question for the architect.
Certainly.
Hi. So I have just a few quick questions. One, just really quickly to kind of scratch off the list here, can you just briefly talk about fencing and Bookman Plaza and how those are going to But
The project doesn't include fencing to prevent people from entering an adjacent plaza.
Mhm.
So I guess I would say that that's kind of their responsibility if they want to privatize that zone.
Okay, just thought I'd check
There's
'cause it
nothing
was-
suggesting that the plaza is a continuous area. I think it'd be fairly clearly
Super. And then
differentiated.
in regard to your own plaza, can you talk just a little bit about what differentiates it from just a vacant concrete space? Like what makes it a plaza, like an inviting pedestrian experience? Can you maybe talk about materials? It's hard to discern the words on the plans that we're looking at because they're very tiny.
Sure. I'm not the designer of the plaza, so I'll do my best. But basically, there's plantings and planters, trees and steps. So if you're looking at this corner, this is a stepped terraced turf area. And then on this other side, there's intended to be a restaurant on the ground floor. So there will be cafe tables and chairs out here, trees along the edge. And then this is where the Nice Ride kiosks are located. I believe the concrete, Scott, maybe you could speak to this. I believe the concrete is textured or colored.
And are there going to be seating on the part which is entry plaza? Is there going to be something? Is it just void, or is there some sort of?
There's a kind of there's some changes in grade that are happening. So there's an element which is kind of like a retaining wall that becomes a bench that's along that side.
But nothing in terms of the underneath the cantilever or anything.
Underneath the cantilever, no, there isn't. There aren't elements under there other than cafe tables and chairs will probably migrate underneath that canopy.
Thank you.
Before you leave, could you give us your name and address for the record?
Sure. Mary Springer, Snow Cry Lake Architects, 3751 Harriet Avenue, Minneapolis.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Slack.
Yeah, I have a question for Mary as well. Specifically on the site plan, you show the trash enclosure. And can you describe the materials and talk a little bit about the placement? Because I think it doesn't really show up in any of the renderings, but it appears that once you open up the swinging doors, that it crosses over the public sidewalk.
Yep, the trash enclosure actually, I think that was one of the conditions for approval from Janelle, that's getting modified a little bit in collaboration with the city. So the concern was to make sure that it was screened on all sides, including the top, to make sure that those people in Bookman Stacks are not viewing down into the trash enclosure. So forgive me, it may change slightly, but right now, yes, the doors are swinging out into the sidewalk. Is that a problem? Does it need to be adjusted?
What are the materials again?
What are we screening that with now? Is it a? Right, I think it still is, but with a perforation. I can get that information, but I don't know.
I guess if currently the trash enclosure, the doors do open and cross over the sidewalk, that seems somewhat problematic,
okay.
Especially during obviously a pickup, because then with the new curb cuts there's no real room for pedestrians to pass through.
I was just going to add, I don't believe Public Works has seen the trash closure with the doors swinging out over the sidewalks. My guess is that they will say, we don't want that to swing out over the sidewalk. It's pretty typical for any trash enclosure anywhere. So that might be covered in the future, but again, I don't think Public Works has seen it yet.
Yeah, I guess my statement would be we're happy to make any modifications to make that work for the city and for Public Works.
Okay, any other questions? Commissioners, we have 4 applications for this item number 9, CUP, a variance, another variance in the site plan review. Commissioner Slack, did you have a motion to make? Or Commissioner Brown, do you have a motion to make?
Yes, I'll start with item A, the conditional use permit, to move approval of that item with the one stated condition.
Okay, moved. Do I have a second? Moved and seconded. Do we have further discussion on item A? If not, please. Oh, Commissioner Lifke here.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I will be supporting the motion, and I have to say that the restrictive covenant concerns are a little bit, to me, like a dangerous territory for us to consider, because I feel like it would really set a very dangerous precedent in terms of what private property owners could require in their property, and the expectation that the city must litigate for them on things that are more restrictive than comply with the comp plan. So I don't believe that that was a valid concern of ours.
Yeah, we look to compliance with our standards. Okay, any other discussion? Please call a roll on item A, please, or application A.
Slack, Lipke-Pier, Cronzer, Gagnon, Brown, Bender, 6-0.
Thank you. That's approved. Commissioner Brown?
And then we'll move on to items B, C, and D. That is the variance for FAR, the variance for plaza design, and the site plan review. Variance C has one stated condition. Item D, the site plan review has 8 stated conditions, so I'll move approval of all 3 of those.
Okay, those 3 moved. Do we have a second? Okay, moved and seconded. Commissioner Lipke-Pier, you had some comments?
Yeah, just under variance C, subpoint 1, I'd be inclined to allow them to keep the turf if they can demonstrate that it will survive and not die, but I'd actually be more concerned if it was just out in the open. I kind of think that the partial shade in the afternoon might allow it to actually not get singed, but it might be nice to have more greenery instead of more concrete. So I would say if they can demonstrate that it'll live, they can be allowed to keep the turf.
Are you trying to amend this by?
I'm not sure. I mean, they're encouraged to consider it. I'm just saying that if it's going to die, they strongly should consider changing it.
I think it's stated that they will be working with staff to find
But I just wanted to let them know that my perspective is, if at all possible, turf.
We're always delighted to hear your perspective. Okay, any other comments, questions on items B, C, and D? If not, please call a roll.
Bender, Brown, Gagnon, Cronzer, Lipke-Pier, Slack, 6-0.
Okay, thank you very much. That is approved. And that concludes our business for the day. We do not have a COW meeting on Thursday, having taken care of that 1 item, or 3 items, I guess it was. And our next meeting is October 14th. So thank you all very much. Thank you for attending us and offering your comments.